If you've made your way through the blind well into the Queen's Court this week, we had a very different encounter this time around. Upon first entering the portal here, we interrupt a conversation between Mara Sov and the emissary of the Nine, which is quite interesting. Mara then discusses an asset and how her next audience does not find the presence of the Travelers chosen to be respectful. So today let's talk about Mara's connection with the Nine, what this asset or weapon may be, and who the Queen of the Awoken may be meeting with in the near future.
If that's so, I accept their terms. Move the asset into position beyond the grave of the First Fleet. And do remind them, I have shown more than enough patience. It was a friend once, a confidant. Now it is a shell. Avoid falling into schemes of the Nine. Like the curse on my people, their games never end. All this, and we find ourselves at the whims of so many small minds. Leave now. My next audience does not find the presence of the Travelers chosen to be respectful.
Alright Guardians, welcome back to the channel, hope you are doing well, and let's jump right into today's video. So let's first begin with a little bit of a brush up on Mara's history with the Nine, and then we'll get into all the details. The Nine's alliance with the Reef is super mysterious and confusing. They've been partnered with the Reef and the Awoken for a very long time, but don't think it's exactly known when this all began, possibly sometime after the Awoken came back to the system. But when you take a look at the big picture here and their overall relationship, things were okay until they weren't. After the Awoken had settled into their new home in the system called the Reef, they began to realize they weren't the only ones drifting out here among the asteroids, as the fallen House of Wolves was gathering an army of millions. Mara and her Awoken staged an attack at Ceres, which ended up destroying the minor planet and scattering the wolves across the region. This triggered a giant chain of events which became known as the Reef Wars and lasted for a couple of years. Here, the Awoken got some leads and some intel, killed leaders, and the cycle just went on and on. At this time, this was when Varix was a scribe for the House of Wolves and decided to change sides and jump on board with the Awoken because he kind of hated Skolas for docking his arms and being a bad leader. This ultimately helped the Awoken in the end as they won the war, captured Skolas, and sent him to the Nine as a gift. The thing is, the Queen was like, here's a gift, we call it Skolas, you can have it. And the Nine were like, alright, we're gonna just freaking release this thing and cause a bunch of madness, which ended up being the House of Wolves, right? So something behind the scenes was kind of iffy. The Nine were playing all these games and things weren't exactly what they seemed. We then fast forward to the Taken King. When the Queen made her plan to take Oryx's throne, she kind of kept everyone out of this loop. Nobody knew about her plan, what ultimately was going to happen, and a bunch of the Awoken died. Well, with some of the new Forsaken cards, it seems that the Nine were let in on this at least a little bit, and they knew Mara just simply didn't die and she had some type of plan here. Here's a look at the Motion to Compel card. Look, her plan is coming together. Always the clever one, always the smug one. She plays the weighted odds we waited. Shall we intervene? No, not yet. Be patient, wait until the dynasty falls. So the Nine knew about Mara's plan, but it seems that some of them got a little bit salty when Oryx invaded the Dreaming City and gunked up the place with his taken goo. So in a brief summary, that's where we are with the Nine. So much more behind it, but I want to get to the Queen's Court stuff, so there you go. When the trials returned in Destiny 2, we were introduced to the emissary of the Nine, who appeared to be Awoken and guided us through a journey to the Third Spire. Auron's Awoken connection may further explain her presence in the Queen's Court, as she has been in contact with the Queen's people before. I mean, she is one of them. Now, it is believed that Auron was once a guardian and ventured deep out into the system and came into contact with the Nine. Here we don't know exactly what the purpose was. She may have been venturing out here trying to save someone named Namki, who we assume is her love. It turns out Namki was on board the Amistris vessel when it came under attack by what the Awoken call the Aphelion. Here's a line from that. Auron, it's me, it's Namki. I don't think I'm coming home, baby. I'm so sorry. I just want to tell you that I love you. And then there's static. So obviously a connection there, right? Orin may have made a deal with the Nine in regards to Namki, trying to find out what happened, but that's for a whole nother video in itself. Just know that she came out as the emissary, and yeah. So in the Queen's court here, Orin must have said something that would benefit the Queen to start, because Mara says, if that's so, I'll agree to their terms, meaning the Nine's terms. The next line is weird. It says, move the asset into position beyond the grave of the First Fleet. The First Fleet is a fleet of Golden Age ships lost around the orbit of Saturn during the collapse. This picture right here pretty much represents this perfectly, a damaged ship from the Cassini or First Fleet, and this is a prime example of what you'd find if you went out towards Saturn in the Destiny universe. So those ships still remain there around Saturn's orbit, but on top of that, there's also all the rubble from the Battle of Saturn. Now, not sure how far away those ships are from each other, but Mara is targeting a derelict ship graveyard for this said asset, much like they have around the reef. Now, what this asset is puzzles me at the moment. At first you would think, hey, it could be one of the Queen's harbingers, right? The oldest one was not used on Oryx's dreadnought and it's still out there, so it could make some sense. But then you realize the Nine have control of whatever this asset is, and seeing as they're one of the most mysterious things in the Destiny universe that we know of, all we can do is speculate. What we do know is that this is some type of plan the two have agreed upon. With Mara's darkness projection on the table weeks before, it wouldn't seem too far-fetched to assume that's what she's preparing for, but we don't know. My other random theory is that it could be some type of ship. Now I don't have evidence to back this up, but Mara does say move it into position, so if it was something small like say a handheld device, I'm not sure if she would use the same wording, right? It seems like whatever this asset is pretty large and possibly even a giant weapon.
I have shown more than enough patience.
Now I believe this reference here is kind of for their whole relationship. The Nine play all these games they messed up in the past, like when they released Skolas, and Mara stuck by their side even through this sort of betrayal. It was a friend once, a confidant. Now it's a shell. Here she could be describing Orin's nature, as she was once awoken, possibly a guardian. Now she's a shell of her former self, working with the Nine whether she wanted it or not.
Whether we wanted it or not, we've stepped into a war with the Cabal on Mars.
Kind of like a curse, and like stated before, she could have made a deal with them, but the point is she was once close to the Queen and now she works with the Nine.
Avoid falling into schemes of the Nine. Like the curse on my people, their games never end. All this, and we find ourselves at the whims of so many small minds. Leave now. My next audience does not find the presence of the travelers chosen to be respectful.
Well, what the heck does that mean? At first thought, you might be like, hey, Eris, Osiris, Toland, they all have contact with the Queen and maybe that's who's going to be meeting with her. But the thing is, those people have assisted us. This audience is something that doesn't like the Guardians because we wield the light. This most likely is something that we are familiar with but don't quite get along with. You could go out on a limb and say, hey, it's the darkness, maybe that's who she's meeting with to see what's going on, but it seems it's much more close to home, doesn't it? Perhaps this is some sort of fallen leadership. We know that the Fallen dislike us because the Traveler left their homeworld in ruins and came here. And while Variks and Mithrax are friendly, they still long for the days when their race could live in peace and once again rebuild. We now know that Variks is leading a group of Fallen and he became a Kel when he left the Reef, but has his feelings changed that much? It's definitely an interesting topic for sure. But anyway, Guardians, that's all I got for today's video. It's really frustrating when we get things like this because we want to know, who's the next audience and what is this asset that they're placing near the First Fleet. I hope some of the information I presented in this video, the lore kind of got the gears turning and maybe we can figure this out together over the next couple of weeks. But let me know down below, do you think this asset is just simply one of the Queen's harbingers or is it something different that the Nine have control over? Also, who do you think Mara is going to meet with next? And how will it affect the relationship moving forward with the Guardians of the Light? Anyway, please be sure to like this video up if you enjoyed and subscribe for some more awesome Destiny 2 news and entertainment. My name's Evade and I'll catch you Guardians in the next one.